feel like sometimes life is really mental.
Dude, that's actually a really good name for a podcast.
We just feel so hopeless. And my message to these people is just have hope and try and like really go for it. There's nothing stronger than your willpower and yourself.
Hey everyone, welcome to Really Mental Season 2, where we want you to know no matter who you are, you're not alone. And I just wanted to mention if you're looking forward to today and our chat with Any Gabrielly, then make sure to follow, like, and subscribe on our socials at Really Mental Podcast. And if you enjoy this, please rate it 5 stars. We really appreciate your support. We're very excited for today's conversation with Annie. We're talking about navigating change and having the confidence to go through the different chapters of life and the things that life can throw at us. I wanted to ask Harrison, how do you have the strength and confidence to go through change in your life?
I think change is going to be inevitable in our life. I think that we're always going to navigate different roadblocks and we're always going to go through change. And change isn't a bad thing. I think sometimes it's looked upon in a negative way, but it's not always like that. An example of in my life where I had a major change was when I moved cities and I started a brand new life around the age of 16 and had to start high school and go in year 10, year 11 and make new friends and have to just recreate myself because I was unfamiliar with my whole surroundings. And I think that during that time when I was navigating through that, it was really important for me to realize and remember that this feeling of feeling like you're unsafe isn't going to be like that forever. The feeling that you're alone isn't going to be like that forever. You will find your tribe, will find the right people around you, and it will take time. And change is not a negative thing. It usually pushes yourself in a place to grow and to develop and to really become a better person.
Totally. It's interesting and something to keep in mind when you're thinking about new opportunities because it can be easy to drift towards fear. But put yourself in the position of if I was fully open, loving myself, and showing love to this opportunity, what is the good that could come from it? And it can also offer you a different perspective. So with that in mind, we're going to welcome Any Gabrielly to the show. We're very excited to get into her journey and learn more about where she's at today. So let's welcome Annie to the show.
Hello, Annie. For those who don't know too much about you, could you please tell us a bit about yourself?
I am Any Gabrielly, and I am a Brazilian singer and performer and actress and everything. I've done a couple of projects, and the biggest ones have been like I did the voice for Moana in Brazil, the Portuguese version. I was part of a pop group called Na United, and I just recently went on my solo career. So soon I'll be putting out music.
Amazing. I feel like there's so many sides to you already. What has inspired you to do a bunch of different things? Because a lot of people would maybe stick to their one thing and never have the confidence to sort of delve into other areas. But what inspired you?
I am a very curious person. I feel like I love knowing about random subjects. So at the same rate that I'm like a performance and I'm an artist and I love doing all that, there was a point where I was like, oh, I'm going to be a doctor. And then I was like, I'm going to be a lawyer. And then I'm going to explore the like space or the human brain, like I am just so in love with every type of subject that involves just humanity and the world in general. So I guess I was just always like experimenting, but art was always something that made my heart beat a little louder.
What does being a curious person look like day to day for you? Say for the person listening that like wants to be more curious, does that mean saying yes to a lot of things that come through, or how does that sort of shape up for you?
I would say saying yes is a part of it, but you can't also just be like yes, yes, yes to everything. You gotta filter it a little bit. But you definitely have to be open to things. There's certain things that I'm like a little resistant to, but I just do it anyway because maybe I'll like it. Maybe it's an opportunity to like it. If you're trying to be more curious or if you're trying to like just explore more, I would say just go for it. Leave your fear behind and just go for it. And if you fail, that's fine too, Just try it.
How did you get to that point of like just being open to trying things, being open to doing that? Because I know a lot of people when they think about their dreams and goals, they're driven by fear and they're too afraid to try things, to put themselves out there.
Nah, I definitely had to like grow into that. It's not easy. I know that everyone has heard that. Like, no, you gotta try, push yourself, this and that. It's definitely not easy, and it's definitely a work that you do like inside out. But I feel like life has put me in a position where like I didn't have a lot of space to say no if I wanted to get what I needed. So let me like give you a little bit of a background story, like I came from nothing. In Brazil, I had no money. I was in a really, really hard situation, living in a really bad house. We had struggles to like even buy food sometimes. So I had this dream and it was what I wanted to do. And so, whenever an opportunity would come my way, if I said no, that would mean I would just end up having like a job that I wouldn't want to have just in order to like have the basics for my family. Or I could go for it and then maybe have a beautiful future and like doing something that I love. So, the way that I just had to do it was because life presented that to me. It was like either you do it or you just never will. So, I just had to try. But sometimes, as I grew up and as my life was more stable and I had more access to things, I found myself in positions where, like, I had the option to say no. And it's gonna suck and it's gonna feel uncomfortable and you might have like little panic sessions after. But I feel like if you work through them and you learn how to navigate that feeling of like, oh my God, I can't do this. Oh my God, I'm terrified. Oh my God, people are gonna judge me. And then it's just gonna be like a habit.
That
Yeah.
makes sense. I had a question from earlier when you were sharing your story about how you grew up and like your childhood and stuff. For kids and like young adults that are listening to this podcast that might be coming from a place where they don't have as many resources, what advice would you give them to chase their dreams?
I feel like when we're in that position, it's really easy to think like there's no way I'm gonna get out of this place, or I can do this, or I can do that. Like we just feel so hopeless. And my message to these people is just have hope and try and like really go for it. There's nothing stronger than your willpower and yourself. If you put your mind to it, you can really find resources and you can find ways. And it's not going to be easy. And you're probably going to feel frustrated and you're going to see a lot of injustice because you're probably going to see situations where you're like working 3, 4, 5 times harder than someone to like get the basics. But you just got to focus on your own journey and you just got to keep pushing.
Wow, I love that. That's a powerful message.
For you, during that time, what made you not give up? Was there anything apart from like booking that role and stuff like that? Was there any sort of mindset that you kept on having to stop yourself from giving up?
I learned one thing very young is that I don't need motivation to do the things that I want to do. Like
Yeah.
motivation is great. Motivation is always welcome. It's great when you have it. But if you don't have motivation, you can't just sit around and wait for it to come. So you go and do your thing. Of course, you have to respect your limits. That's very important. Like you can't push yourself past your limit because that will just push you over the edge. But if you're not feeling, oh, I don't want to do this today, just do it. Like I know you don't feel motivated. I know it's not your best day, but do it because that's going to bring the results. The consistency is going to bring the results. I was also very fortunate to have a mom that was there for me, like a support system. But I do know that there's a lot of people who don't have that support system, whether it's coming from their family. But it's really important to find something to rely on, whether it's like a hobby that you like or music but it's just like there's little tools that sometimes will get you really far.
100%. I love that. Someone told me like you make habits on the days when you don't want to get up and do it. So it's like you make sure that you can at least try and get something done that day. It could be one small thing that pushes you a step further.
For those listening that are trying to navigate their life, what are 3 key things that you have learned that you could call like life hacks or like things that have really, really improved your life?
Okay, first one, I would say feelings, like bad feelings, do not disappear. They're a part of your life and you have to learn how to deal with them instead of like ignoring them or trying to make them go away. This will never happen. They'll be there forever. So learning how to deal with your emotions is the biggest life hack. The bad emotions, biggest life hack. I would say the second life hack is a life hack that David Bowie taught me, which is like if you're on your comfort zone for too long, you're not in the right place. I'd say you have to be a little outside. And he used this example where like pretend you're in the ocean. And if you're touching your feet, that's too safe. If you're drowning, that's not good either. You just have to be on that area where your feet are not touching the bottom, but it's like it's just exciting enough, you know? You get that thrill because that's when you give yourself space to like new things come into your life and just like growth. That's the second life hack. Thank you, David Bowie. The third life hack, giving yourself grace, giving yourself I feel like us as people in general, we always ask so much from ourselves. We're so hard on ourselves. We want to be the best. We want to be the fastest. We want to be the most efficient. And we compare each other so much, you know. But at the end of the day, you just have to understand that everyone has a different journey. Everyone has a different time. Doesn't mean it's bad. Doesn't mean it's good. Doesn't mean anything. You just have your own journey and you have to give yourself grace in order to enjoy it, you know?
Yeah, that's great.
I was thinking about we could go into navigating change, kind of going through the large changes in your life that have happened, Annie. So like starting with what it was like coming from Brazil in the environment that you were and then going into Now United and being in a pop group. What was that experience like and that change?
It was a massive change, and there were great things about it, and there were not so great things about it. I would say I went in it with so much hope and excitement because again it was one of those situations where it was like, oh, this opportunity might change my life and my career, so I was like going at it, not even like thinking what could be wrong or right. I was like, no, this is the opportunity. So I was going full out, and when I finally got it and it finally like sunk in, like, okay, you're in Night United, okay, this is the real deal. Oh my god, then I did start freaking out a little bit. I wasn't so much sure at the time, I'd say, so I was like more scared, but I was still like excited to travel the world, and still it was my dream. I guess when it really started like kicking me in the butt was when that United started getting big and other people started coming into our little circle. It wasn't so little anymore. It was like
Yeah.
thousands of people, and then it started becoming millions of people, and that is a lot when you're like 15, you know? So I guess the biggest change wasn't even like, oh, I'm traveling the world and then that, because I was like really excited about all those things. And I was seeing it as like an opportunity more than like, oh my God, you know? But when people started coming in, that was like a change. I was like, I don't know how to deal with this. This is really scary. And I just had to do it, you know? Like there was no way I could ignore it. So there was a lot of seasons to that, you know? There were
Yeah.
seasons I was very excited about it all. I was like, oh my God, I love having people around me and I could talk to them and they're going to be beside me all the time. But there were moments where, like, I don't know, I would like slip up or do something not so right or say something stupid, like everybody does sometimes. And there were like 7 million people ready to judge me. And I was like, ah! I had no idea on how to deal with that. But I just had to, you know? I just had to do it. I feel like change is the biggest opportunity you have to grow as a person. It'll give you really hard lessons and it'll be uncomfortable, but I've learned so much and it's like it's literally a gift. I'm so glad I went through that now. Yeah.
Appreciate you sharing that. Yeah, it's a great way to like shift the perspective on the unknown and the
Mhm.
potential like scariness of experiencing change.
We're all like going after what we believe and we're all going after love and trying to be happy, but everyone just calls it a different thing and chases it in a different way and takes a different path. And that was so powerful in my life. That was so important for me because I learned how to take those routes too. I've learned how to, like, when I see myself stuck in one place, I know how to take a step back and see all these other options of like paths I can take, and none of them is better. None of them is like prettier, or they're all valid because they're all going to the same place. You know what I mean?
Yeah.
So I guess like as an artist and as a person, being in the group in all these 5 years, that has changed so much and it's been so positive and sometimes like a little mind boggling, but definitely is so good. And the performance feeling that you mentioned, it's still the same. And that's, I still get nervous to perform. I still love performing. I obviously feel more confident, you know?
Yeah.
I obviously know what I'm doing a lot more. But the feeling it's still the same. It remains, and that's how those are the moments I remind myself of, like, yeah, this is really what I love to do. This is really what I was born to do, you know? Because there's no feeling like it to me, you know? It's the best thing in the world, and I feel so free, and I feel like I'm aligned with the universe. I feel like I'm doing what I'm supposed to do. It's the best feeling, you know? So I try to keep that excitement. And whenever I'm forgetting it, I really try to go back to the roots of it all, like why art. And I like do that soul searching a little bit because it's so important that it keeps going. Otherwise, it kind of loses the purpose, you know? So
Yes.
to keep that with you. So even though I changed so much as a performer and as a person, the feeling is still the same.
Yeah, that makes sense. That's great. That's great that that's the same feeling. You've been able to maintain that and not lose yourself in it. You mentioned earlier that all different people have the same goals and the same things that they're working towards, right? If you were to outline what those are for those listening that aren't maybe too sure and haven't really thought about it in this way, like what are the things that how you have found everyone is trying to work towards, and how have you found in your life the best ways to get there?
I've said this like I think twice during our conversation, but I do really believe that everyone is just trying to work towards their own like happiness and fulfillment and finding like love, whether it's in their beliefs, whether it's like in the universe, being aligned with it. But at the same time, it all comes down to like being happy and being in peace. That's what people are looking for. And chasing your dreams sometimes is part of that. Like for me, like I said, when I'm on stage, that's my way of feeling aligned with the universe. I feel so in peace. I feel so great. I feel like other people are doing it in the ways that they think it's best, you know? I
Yeah.
feel like everyone's just chasing it. It's really hard to explain. It's like something that you have to see to kind of like really fully comprehend.
Yeah.
But and some people, yeah, some people go about it with religion, you know? And they like devote themselves to their religion and they live that so intensely and they feel fulfilled. And some people go about it with their dreams like I am that person. And some people understand that it's just like your relationships that matter. And some people it doesn't have to be one thing. Like for me, my relationships and my career have to be like walking hand in hand, but some people it's just like one of the parts, you know, but some people it's all the parts. But what I'm trying to say is like I feel like people work really hard to have these things that sometimes you're like, oh, nothing matters because we're gonna die, you know, like people say that, but it just really does matter because it gives meaning to your life. It gives you the purpose that we're all looking for. It gives you that like feeling that you're aligned with your purpose, and that there's nothing like it. I feel like once you have that feeling, you'll really understand why you're doing things.
Yeah. No, I understand that, and especially after you mentioned like traveling the world and understanding that people going about things in maybe a slightly different way, but ultimately we're all just trying to find the same thing, which is, that peace, that fulfillment, that love
Hmm.
in whatever form it is. Was there like a place you went to where you're like, wow, I've just had this like epiphany moment, or like that's gonna stick with me?
There's been a couple, but I remember in India. And India was like a big thing for me because India and Senegal were beautiful, and it was like really really cool to experience that up close. I remember the kids in Senegal being so happy with like so so little from like human interaction, you know? Like you would do the least and their day would change and their lives would change and they would dance with you and they would look at you. And I miss that so much. I'm Brazilian, so I do have that in my home country, you know? Like I grew up with that human energy, that human interaction and that like eye to eye thing, and we celebrate things and we live so full out, like we really feel everything. And so like going to Senegal and seeing that up close, it was like, yes, this is what it is about, you know? Like this is what it is about. This feeling that everyone had right now and the appreciation for this little thing that just happened. And same with India. In India it was a little like a little another level because I remember seeing things that I remember seeing kids on the street and they were like burning paper in order to like heat themselves up. And I remember that was so heartbreaking for me. And like that wasn't the only situation I saw. You know, there were like a couple, but it was the same. I'm not trying to romanticize this whole situation of like, oh my God, they were suffering so much, but they're so happy. No, it's like it is really hard, but it's still like they really appreciate the things that they're given, you know, and nobody should be in that situation, and it's still heartbreaking, not romanticizing it at all. But I
Yep.
found a lot of beauty in the way that they perceived the little things that were given to them.
Yes. Yeah. Totally.
Why do you think that those kids that have so little are so happy and appreciative of the things that they have? But in our day and age, sometimes kids will be given everything and still not be happy and still be sad stuff. Why do you think that is? And there's such a big disparity. Like, what is the correlation to happiness then?
I feel like they appreciate it more because that is all they have, I'd say, you know? But it's also since you don't have the material things and you don't have the basic needs, you know, I feel like they have a lot more time to find other things that will fulfill them in the way that, like, maybe having a decent place to live didn't, you know? So everyone will still try and find that bit of happiness, whether it's like playing soccer on the streets or like being connected with your family. I feel like when you have everything, you don't really think that. You don't really even get to that thought process of like, oh, I'm gonna find happiness in this and this. You're like you're gonna find happiness in the things that you have and the things that you think should make you happy, you know? So it's like some people have everything and they are happy, but some people don't and they're like questioning it all. But it's like it's never gonna be completely related to the things that you have, you know? It's always great to have some comfort. It's always great to have the things that you want to have. It's definitely gonna help you get there, you know? But it's like the core things of life, whether it's like human interaction or the things that you can't buy, which is like a I don't know, it's just like it's definitely human interaction, I feel like that's like the main thing. Those things are things that you just have to really appreciate them, and it's I feel like when you have everything, sometimes it's harder for you to like realize that that's what you need at that moment.
Yeah. 100%. No, I think it's talking about, and recognizing the fact that we are in positions where we have, a roof over our heads,
Mhm.
a heater, and
Mhm.
I think hopefully it can show people that, like, no matter what situation you're in, whether it's a breakup or you just lost your job, whatever it is, like, try and find this, the small things that are in your
Mhm.
life that you do have to be grateful for. That's what I took out of it. So it made me sort of think, like, when it comes to you moving to LA and, leaving home where your family is, how are you sort of going in the process of, I guess, being grateful for what you have in your life? That's a pretty big move. It can be hard.
It was hard. It's still hard. It's very recent. And with all that said, it's also important to address that it's okay to be sad. Sometimes
Yeah.
it's okay, like angry at the things that are not going right. Because it's also easy to be like, oh, there's people that are going through this. Your feelings are not valid. No, they're valid. They're valid. But it's also important that you oh, it's also important that you have the perspective of seeing that you still have things to be grateful for, you know? And this friend of mine once, she lives in New York and she has a balloon tattooed on her. And I asked about her tattoo one day, and she said that that tattoo represents her balloon moments. And I was like, what is that? And she's like, you know, when a kid sees a balloon and they light up with like happiness, anyone who sees a balloon just gets happy because it's like a really cool thing and it's just air and it can pop and it can fly away. It's just a balloon, but it makes you happy. And sometimes you take that happiness with you. She said she lives for those balloon moments, whether it's like getting home from work really tired and taking her shoes and her bra off. Oh, it's such a relief. And that's a balloon moment for her. Or like biting into that piece of chocolate that was in your fridge the whole day and you finally got home and you're so excited to you bite into it and you're like, oh, this is so good. That's another moment. And that taught me so much.
Yes, totally.
Right? Like we usually appreciate the days where something great happens and then but you just gotta appreciate the days where you just like got to chill, got to just live, you know? So yeah, so I learned that a lot. And the hard part about moving to LA was that obviously the culture was like the first thing that strikes me. because like I said, I'm Brazilian, so we're so like we're out there, we hug each other, we celebrate, we're so loud, and here people are like different. They're not like this. Like I go to a club and people are like lounging and they're like talking, they're doing their thing, and I want to be like you know, and so it was hard to adapt and like find people that I really like identified with, but then it was just like about coming back to those moments that like really I should be grateful for, whether it's like arriving in my apartment and it's my apartment and thinking about like the things that I'm
Yes.
next and how beautiful the sunset is here, or like how close I am to the beach. I was still feeling sad sometimes, and I would still have to like just be on my bed complaining, and that's okay. It doesn't make me a bad person or ungrateful,
Yeah.
but it's still like I was still like able to go back to those moments, and they kept me standing, you know?
That's amazing. Well, I'm glad that you're finding your feet with that. I'm super excited to watch you continue to thrive and prosper. And it's been awesome to speak with you and have you on
Yeah.
season 2. Yeah, you're a really driven person. I can tell you're very talented because you've come so far. So,
Mhm.
yeah, excited for the future, Annie.
Oh, thank you so much. I had so much fun.
Of course, of course. Thank you for your time. And when the song comes out, I hope you're surrounded by the right people so you can just enjoy it.
So I really loved that chat with Annie and how we delved into different areas and how real and raw she was about her experiences with embracing change and also being open to new things and embracing herself to new cultures and learning from different people and seeing where people want to go. I wanted to ask you, Will, what was your biggest takeaway from this episode?
Yeah, I would say for me, there were two things that stood out. One of them was holding on to hope. And I found it really interesting when, we asked her the question around, well, I guess, is your mentality like there's nothing to lose, so you might as well just go for it? And her saying, well, you actually could lose that hope for your dream. And I'd never had anyone, say that before, and I've never heard that. And I was like, wow, it's really important to figure out on whatever journey you're on how to hold on to that dream life you have, that hope you have for yourself to achieve something. And remember that each thing you do can also like impact that. So make sure you really protect it because that's all we have on this life, what we're working towards, our passion. So it is something worth protecting. And I think as well, the second part was just giving yourself grace. Definitely for me, I know that it can be really easy for me to be critical on myself. Say, for instance, whether it's a song and I'm like, well, it's just not really that perfect. And therefore, it can be easy for me to feel like it sucks. But it's so important to remember, okay, what are the things I love about it? And what do I think I did right here? Because it's so easy for us to be in our own bubble and put this pressure on ourselves. So I really enjoyed getting those two sort of reminders and also perspective changing comments from Annie. I hope you found it really valuable. And I just wanted to say thank you for making it this far and for joining us on another episode of Really Mental. If you enjoyed this, could you please consider sharing it to a friend that it could help? Subscribing and following us on our socials at Really Mental Podcast. If you feel like this chat was worthy of 5 stars, we also would really appreciate your support. Thank you so much for tuning in, and we're really excited to share with you another conversation next week. Hope you have a beautiful week. Thanks, everyone.